Alrighty, we're live. Finally, again, one more time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition, another episode of DojoLIVE. And today this is going to be a little bit tricky because it's very technical. I mean, tricky for me because as I have mentioned several times in other broadcasts, I'm not an engineer, and this is a very, very highly technical topic. But I had to do some research, to be honest. I had no clue what it was, but that's why we'll also have Hugo here, my fellow Nearsoftian, and I'll introduce Hugo in a bit. But for now, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, of course. His name is Berkeley Martinez. Berkeley is the CTO at Free Code Camp and also a partner at Real World React Incorporated. Well, Berkeley, of course, I'm going to let you do the introduction. You introduce yourself, of course. But first and foremost, thank you for having agreed to be here with us today, Berkeley. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. Berkeley, I understand that you're part of the Free Code Camp, right? Which is an open source community. That's what I have in my notes. And basically, your motto is visit people who learn to code and build projects for nonprofits. Am I correct?
Yes.
Excellent, great. And also, okay, I'll tell you what. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the topic because I think this is going to get interesting by the minute once we have also Berkeley and also Hugo to actually do the talking. Today's topic is React, Redux, and RxJS, async, and U. It doesn't get any more intriguing for me than that, so I don't know what that is. Right? Okay, so you'll tell us all about it in a minute. You're going to talk, Berkeley, about the benefits of using the RxJS library and an introduction to handling complex and asynchronous side effects within a React or React Redux app.
Sure.
Whoa, that was a tough tongue twister. Berkeley, welcome to the show. So tell us, Berkeley, why did you choose this particular topic, and can you start elaborating a little bit for us and for me, especially for me, and then for the audience because they're the experts.
Sure.
Welcome.
I chose this topic mainly because I do a lot of React development, hot topic, and I started using Redux recently, transitioning from a Flux library I built. The library I built was a Flux implementation around using RxJS. So moving to Redux felt kind of like a step down as far as handling async and complex stuff. So I ended up jimming a lot of stuff together to get to work with Redux. Eventually, I came up with a pattern that I feel is pretty close to what I want it to be as far as using RxJS and Redux itself. At Free Code Camp, we use a lot of RxJS. Most of the backend, almost every API point you hit will use RxJS to do a lot of the database calls and caching and stuff like that.
I have a oh, Carlos, you're muted?
You're muted, yeah.
Yeah, you're muted.
Still muted.
Sorry about that. It happens very, very often, so you would be surprised how often this happens. Okay, well, you're going to start enlightening me a little bit more as every little bit more by the minute. But before we start with the questions, either on my end or Hugo's, I'd like to also encourage the audience to send us your questions. You already know how to do it. Just go to, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel or on our page, you just go to the Be Part of the Conversation link. That's right there. You should see it. You can't miss it. It's right at the very bottom of the player. Just click it, and it'll take you to our Q&A. All right. So, Hugo, let's start off with you. Let's continue with you. I know that you have prepared a set of questions for Berkeley. So, please, let's start get rolling with those.
Yeah. Just to clarify, like I don't know a lot about functional reactive programming. I mean, I have been like kind of following this topic. I'm pretty interested on functional programming or functional reactive programming. So yeah, I have some question for Berkeley. One of them, now that you said that at FreeCodeCamp you use like RxJS a lot, I wonder what kind of things do you use it for? I mean, I'm interested in like what is what are the most common scenarios in web apps where you will decide to use this tool?
Um, so the most common example you'll see is doing things like tracking a mouse drag on a field or canvas or a div. It makes it very trivial to combine these sort of asynchronous events together into one coherent file. But I think the most interesting things that we do at FreeCodeCamp with RxJS are things that are a little more complicated on the back end without it. So for instance, we do caching for our challenges. So at FreeCodeCamp, there are many challenges and we update them very frequently. When we do a deployment, we want to update our database and make sure that the rest of the code base has been updated as well before serving that down to the clients or our users. So one thing we do is we cache on server start, we cache all the challenges in an observable. And every time someone hits an endpoint requesting a challenge, instead of going to the database, pulling the challenge out, it's actually using the observable, and the observable detects if it's made the request to the database already. If it hasn't, it makes that request. And if it makes that request, then it caches that information, and every subsequent request will see a cache version of that. So we can update our challenges, which are in our code base, without actually restarting our servers. Or I'm sorry, without actually updating code base or server code. So we update our database and then just have our servers restart, and that could update our cache. We could do cooler things also that I just haven't had time to implement. We could actually have a trigger that would expire the cache and then pull them down instead of having to restart the server. So things like that.
Oh, I see. So that's like a case where you are using ArcGIS on server
On
side,
the
right,
back
on the
end.
back end, because you're using Node.js. Okay. Yeah, because I know that. I mean, there is the concept of the reactive extensions, and like I think there are like implementation libraries for different stacks, right? I think they even have like an implementation for .NET and for C#.
They have
But
Java, they have Go.
yeah,
I think it's like every language now, essentially. I
yeah,
think there's a Haskell one as well.
yeah. Another question I have, if I may, is mm, like for my research, I think like the success story or the success example I have seen of some company using RxJS is Netflix, and I have seen like a couple of videos from I don't remember the name of this guy, but he's kind of the architect of software architect in Netflix, and like he explains how they use this library. So kind
Maybe
of
Ben Lesh.
yeah.
I think his name is Ben Lesh is maybe the one you're talking about.
No, I think it's Hussein is the last name, I think.
Oh, Jafar.
Yeah,
Jafar Hussain,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He's the one. And like in my mind, like I had this idea that maybe using functional reactive programming using RxJS is like more for like a big company or like you have to have you must have like this like complex scenario or when you are using a lot of data and there are a lot of interactions or something like that. And I don't know if like on a smaller application, for example, like the one I'm working on, will really benefit from using RxJS, or if it will be like complex to implement in an existing application. I don't know what's your experience. Because I believe that I guess the FreeCodeCamp didn't start like at first you didn't use RJS, right?
Not before I came on board as a
Mm,
CTO. But as soon as I came on board, I saw many places where it could benefit. And indeed, as soon as I started adding RxJS to some of the endpoints, the more traffic endpoints, we saw a huge reduction in just our database calls, right? So now we're
mhm,
caching with RxJS. It makes async stuff easy. So the question of should I use Rx in smaller applications? I think it's kind of the cusp of the question. I would say yes. The second you need to do anything asynchronous, I think
mhm,
observables is a much better pattern than callbacks by themselves.
mm,
Um, Especially if you find yourself using promises, you can replace
mm,
kind of those promise calls with observables pretty easily. And there's some niceties in RxJS, like converting promises to observables, which make kind of making other libraries compatible with observables pretty easily. Anytime they
mhm,
have a promise, you can just convert it to an observable. I
mhm,
think the only time you really don't want to include RxJS is if you have something that's very static, right, or
mhm,
simple, um, something that's quick one-off. You won't see much benefit from adding RxJS. Um, but I personally use it as much as possible. One nice thing about it is you don't have to worry about uh, you don't have to worry if a thing you're doing is asynchronous or synchronous.
mhm,
It's all abstracted away in the observable, so you don't have to worry about that. You just treat everything as an observable, and the observable takes care of waiting for database calls to return or um, waiting for an OAuth token to be verified. You don't have to worry about that. You just um, map over it, and when it's done, it's done. It does what you need it to do.
all right. I think maybe uh, people in the audience could benefit if like you can explain in more general terms, like for example, what is an observable and why it is important or why it is like an important concept in when using RxJS or functional reactive programming.
Yeah, sure. So RxJS is a library
Mm,
that allows you that creates observables.
mhm,
Um, so an observable itself is kind of a hard concept to grasp at first, especially if you're not using it, right? So it's easy for me to hear just to talk about it, but until you really use it,
mhm,
you won't get the full grasp of what it's doing. But the easiest way I found to explain what an observable is to kind of relate it to a function. So it's kind of like a special type of function that can return many items over time. So a function will take in some input and return an output, right? So you'll get one return for that. An observable, on the other hand, can return one, it can return zero, it can return many. It can also return observables. It can also return errors in a specific path. So instead of just throwing them up and hoping something catches that, the observable itself has built-in a built-in error track to keep those things in line. You can also think of observables as arrays over time. So one thing you can think of is a mouse click, right, on a div. That's an event that happens. But let's say you want to map over those event clicks, right? So you want to map over the values. It's hard to do that with just plain event emitters and callbacks, right? You have to use a lot of imperative code to move the data around. But with observables, you wrap the event click in an observable, and now every time there's a click, it's piped into the next observable chain. So now you can just map over them plainly. You can combine that with another event. For instance, you can combine it with click up. So now you get notified when a user clicks down. And then with another observable, you can say keep track of where the mouse is until a user clicks up. And now you combine these two in such a way that you'll get the exact area in the viewport where the user clicked and dragged. So now you could use that information to do something like a video game where you drag something across the screen, or even like a Tinder-like app where you swipe left and swipe right, right, to say yes or no. Um, so hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what an observable is and how powerful it is.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot. I have one more question, unless you want to chime in, Carlos.
Well, the only thing, absolutely, I always do, especially now that I have so many questions and whirling around my head about this particular topic. So please bear with me. Okay, but before we get into that, just a quick reminder to the audience, please send us your questions through the Be Part of the Conversation prompt. And it's right there on the player. Okay, a little parenthesis from, this is my question, a little parenthesis from the technical part, okay? Because again, I'm having a hard time following you, but there's something that I think it relates to me personally as a non-engineer, and it's from the description, from the event itself. You say that it's well, your information about you is you're part of FreeCodeCamp's team, and this is an open source community of busy people who learn to code and build projects for nonprofits. All right, so needless to say, my question would be tied to this idea, because you say as an open source community of busy people, a lot of us are busy, who learn to code. Does this mean that it can be that FreeCodeCamp would be a venue for people, you know, an average Joe just like myself, who is barely getting his hands wet on these on all these programming languages? I mean, getting my hands dirty with programming, is that something? Is this what this is all about for people like for everyday run-of-the-mill people just like myself?
Yeah, exactly. So FreeCodeCamp itself is completely free, completely online, interactive. It's all self-paced. So you go at your own pace. There aren't cohorts like a boot camp or something. It's really designed for people who can't really go the boot camp route, right? So boot camps themselves are really expensive. You got to think about it. They're housing you and teaching you for 3 months. It's huge cost. I think the most expensive one here in San Francisco is about $18,000. So $18,000, but that's not the total cost. You also have to consider the cost of moving to a city that has a boot camp, the cost of not working for 3 months, and the cost of the time you take afterwards trying to find a job, food, housing, that kind of stuff. So most people can't really do that, most people in the world. The other thing is, you know, just the time constraint itself, right? If you have a family, if you already work full time, and you want to switch careers, FreeCodeCamp is really the best place to do it. You do it at your own pace. So you can probably spend maybe 2 hours a night, just like, you know, Quincy, the founder of FreeCodeCamp himself. You know, he works late into the night because he has a family, he has a newborn baby that he takes care of. So it's designed for people in that situation. I think myself included in that category. FreeCodeCamp wasn't around when I started to learn the program, but I used a lot of online classes, a lot of online tutorials to learn the code. I think FreeCodeCamp is a much better approach than what I did. But yeah, it's designed for anybody who doesn't have the time or the money to invest in the bootcamp route.
Okay, I see. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for elaborating on that. And the second thing that I wanted to mention or ask is the following. And again, I'm reading off of the information that I have about you, and I understand that you after finishing your mechanical engineering degree, then you went into software development. In a way, I can relate to that. And then I'm going to make a comment, and then I'm going to ask my question to you. It's sort of like a similar situation to what I have been experiencing, because I said I'm not an engineer, but I've been working in the technology or the software development industry in other areas like marketing and communication for a number of years. But until recently, and which means that I have basic working knowledge to do my job and the things that I do. But as of recently, and because I'm involved in in the DojoLIVE page itself a little bit, just a little bit, so I'm getting to get my hands onto HTML, CSS, JavaScript, style sheets, and all those topics that have to do a little bit with software development, which is at a basic level. Okay, I'm never going to say I'm a developer, but I'm learning how to, even one day at a time. Okay. But and I mentioned this because I come from a non-engineering background. My major is in communication sciences, and then I found that as I learned how to, I don't know, how to add a link using HTML, I find it really, really encouraging, and it's really amazing. It's really interesting. It's really enjoyable. So I'm discovering things about software development that are useful for what I do. In your case, Berkeley, you went from mechanical engineering, and so I'd like to ask you, in this similarity of circumstances, coming from one background and going to another, how was it for you? Why did you go from mechanical engineering into software development? What made you shift gears and get into software development?
Sure. So as you said, I have a degree in mechanical engineering. As a mechanical engineering student, I did a lot of robotics, but more of the control side of robotics. I didn't get too deep into the programming side or AI or vision, that kind of stuff. I was doing controls, so manipulating robotic arms. I did some rehabilitation robotics, but it was more on the design side. After graduating college, I quickly found that trying to get into the robotics industry is very difficult if you do not have a master's, or even with a master's, it can be very difficult. I spent a lot of time looking for a job as a mechanical engineer, and I found it very difficult. I did eventually land a job, but the company itself didn't last very long. As soon as I jumped on board, they kind of ran out of money. So during that time spent looking for a job as a mechanical engineer, I decided to throw up a blog and start writing articles about robotics. It was a WordPress site that I put up on there, and in the process of tweaking it and trying to get it to the way I liked, trying to make it look like how I wanted it to look, I started learning about web development and JavaScript in general. Once I learned about Node and started doing Node programming, I really kind of fell in love with the idea of Node and JavaScript and servers and just web development in general. So I just spent all my time learning about web development, about 3 months of intensive study. And after those 3 months, a buddy of mine saw the work I was doing, the stuff I was building, and he suggested that I just freelance instead of pursuing my mechanical engineering career. And I think that was probably the best decision I've ever made. As soon as I started freelancing, about a week after I started freelancing, I got a job through Elance, and then within a week I finished and I got my first $1,000. And I really enjoyed the work I put into that. I felt very fulfilled. I decided, mechanical engineering isn't working out. I'm not liking what I hear from my fellow colleagues who are doing it. So I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to become a software developer.
Oh, I see. Okay, great story about how you got into this. Yeah, and I can relate because I'm trying to think of the word that is commonly used when you start getting the hang of it. You become fond of something, and I realized from the little experience that I've had with these tools, like the ones I said, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, are very exciting. That would be like the word. So it kind of gets to you, and then you want to learn more and do more things, and so on and so forth. I know I might not be a software developer ever, but it's now I do things that I didn't do before, which is the exciting part. Okay, Hugo, back to you. Let's go back to your questions, so please. And also, again, if the audience has any, please send them to us through the Q&A prompt right there on the player on our screen. So go ahead, Hugo, feast away.
Yeah. This last topic, because like a common theme, I see that people in other fields like kind of find this passion in software development, and eventually some of them like jump to the software development bandwagon, right? And it's like something, and I find it interesting that it is your case, Berkeley, and it is also like what Free Code Camp helps. I mean, Free Code Camp helps those kind of people, right? Uh, and I was saying before the call that I joined Free Code Camp. I found it like it has this good vibe and this like new vibe friendliness for people that are just like taking their first steps learning to code. And I know I find that amazing. Um, but well, I have one question from a previous topic that we touched. Is Well, you were telling us about how you introduced RxJS, right, to the free code base. I would like to ask.
Hugo, you froze. Carlos, do you see it? He's frozen on my end.
Yeah, he actually did. That happens a lot. So I mean, let's not panic because it happens very often when we're doing the broadcast. So he might be uh, leaving the conversation and then jumping back in.
Sure.
Okay,
So if I can speak to his point.
Oh yeah, please. I mean, I was going to say something, but please go ahead.
So he said that Free Code Camp has this kind of warm vibe and very welcoming vibe. I think that's one of the biggest reasons we're so successful is we have that vibe. I remember learning to code myself. It was a very isolating and lonely thing because I didn't know anyone else who did web development. I was using other software, other online tools like Code School and Code Academy, but it was very lonely. I think I started to learn right on the cusp of this kind of growth of community in the coding sphere of building communities. I think we started out with that in mind. Growing communities is the best way to become a developer, so that you don't feel that isolation. A lot of people don't get through that isolation.
Okay. Did you say? I think I lost the last word. You said. Did you say isolation?
Isolation. Yeah.
Oh, isolation. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, Hugo, we have you back.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I lost my internet connection. Went down. I don't know if
you dropped right before asking the question.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, my question was about introducing like functional reactive programming and the use of a tool like RxJS to an existing code base. I mean, maybe if you are like in a development team setting, some people may not like this new approach or this paradigm shift. I don't know if this is something that has happened to you. I mean, because maybe people are not used to this kind of tool. So what would be like your recommendation if you for people that is in that scenario?
Yeah, that's definitely the case that some people find it difficult to adopt. I think there's probably two ways to go about this to get it into your code base. One is just to make the case to whoever's in charge of maintaining the code base or the direction of the software team. And I think there's a really strong case for observables, but it is a steep learning curve. The other direction would be to do things like having a weekend where everyone just hacks on RxJS. Create your own projects using it and get used to it. I think with use in your projects, you see the benefit of it, and you'll overcome the mental strain of adopting this paradigm, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once you get it, once it clicks, then you see like, oh my God, I should be using this everywhere. And I think if you talk to anyone on the Netflix team, and anytime the Netflix team kind of does a presentation that isn't necessarily about observables, you'll hear them talk about observables because it's such a fantastic tool. It's so powerful. It allows you to abstract the async of JavaScript away. You don't even have to think about it. Yeah, so introducing it into the team, my suggestion would be come up with like a weekend where everyone just learns RxJS and then make a decision there and see if people enjoy it after a weekend of using it. Then I would say there's a huge benefit introducing it even over the steep learning curve.
Berkeley, I have something real quick. I'm going to jump in to ask you something that pulled my attention. You used a phrase that I found particularly interesting and intriguing at the same time. You said the mental strain of adopting paradigms, right?
Yeah.
So why did you say that? Why is it? What did you consider a mental strain? And how, if so, how can we overcome it?
Yeah, so I didn't always use RxJS observables or the observable pattern. I didn't get it at first. I think I tried a tutorial that was built by Jafar Hussain of Netflix, and I played with it, and it's really interesting, but I just didn't see where I would use it, right? And I didn't really grasp all the concepts of it. So that's kind of the mental strain I'm talking about. Is there's kind of this like little curve of learning, right? Anything really, and the curve is different for different projects. But for observables, it's kind of like this, and then there's a little hill, and then getting up to that first hill is really difficult, and you kind of need someone to push you to do it. I'm trying to remember back to how I overcame that. And I think it's just from watching so many presentations of people telling me that observables are really powerful.
Okay.
Yeah. That was actually my next question. Like, what's your advice for people that want to start learning this and find all these challenges and find that everything is so confusing? And I think it's also difficult because you are learning all these tools and at the same time you are learning this new paradigm, right? So, I think you can already answer that question, and I think it's pretty good advice.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend beginners to code to learn observables. I'm still not. I don't see a good way for a beginner to learn it, but I might be wrong on that. I'm sure Netflix has taught their junior devs observables, and they loved it. But to kind of to that point of the difficult mental strain, I think learning the code itself is also kind of the same mental strain, but not the kind of syntax, not learning the code and learning how to do an if statement and learning how to do create a function. I think that kind of stuff is pretty easy once you get to understanding it. The difficult part of becoming a programmer is the debugging, right? How do I fix something that's broken? That's the most difficult part. And I think people will kind of misfocus when they're learning to code. And I think it's the same way with observables. You can't really, you can kind of learn the syntax and how to use it, but you don't know when to use it until you started trying to break things in something that's already built and with using observables. Or you try to build something on your own with the specific purpose of using observables.
Hugo, does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder, Berkeley, I mean, we have been talking about functional programming and all these tools that they are JavaScript tools, right? And JavaScript is kind of is a multi-paradigm programming language. But are you interested, or have you I don't know, try to learn about some languages that are more purely functional. I don't know, maybe Clojure or Haskell, or like some of these more hardcore language that are it's well, to me it seems like they will be like very difficult to grasp. And I don't know, what's your take on that topic?
Yeah, definitely. I've tried learning ClojureScript before. I think ClojureScript and Clojure are extremely interesting. Um, but to my eye, all the parentheses just are extremely distracting, right? It's a Lisp programming language, so it's kind of built into the language that there's so many parentheses. You're constantly nesting all these function calls.
Yeah.
I still want to learn Clojure and ClojureScript, and I have some ideas for projects. I'm really interested in Elm. So Elm is another functional language that compiles to JavaScript, and Elm is also the inspiration behind Redux. Elm itself, it has something like observables, or I should say it has FRP, which is kind of like observables, but they've recently announced that they're removing observables in favor of something else. Like I think they call them subscribables. I'm not sure. Those are the only tool languages that I'm really interested in learning other than JavaScript. I think the difficulty is that JavaScript is kind of everywhere, right? It's in the browser. You can launch servers extremely easy, and you can launch servers that are very efficient at serving content really easily. So it's hard to find languages that can overcome the barriers of dethroning JavaScript. So yeah, there are a lot of interesting functional languages out there. I think doing JavaScript in a functional way is sufficient to learn functional programming.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you mentioned Elm, because yesterday, like, it was like my second attempt at learning Elm, because I also find it like pretty interesting, and I think it's well, I just want to have enough free time to be able to really grasp it this time and maybe start using it in some toy project or something. Because
Yeah.
I find it has like a very good appeal. I think it can be like kind of a gateway drug to get into functional programming or some other more hardcore languages.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also something that I find very interesting is like with Elm and with all the tools that are provided by the Elm platform, it's kind of like you have everything that you need to do with a lot of JavaScript libraries and different tools. Like you get it designed when you use Elm. So I think that's like kind of the appeal also.
Yeah, that's an up and a down as well. I think the recent blog post of them removing FRP from Elm kind of works against that point you just made, where like it has everything you need. People were finding creating WebSockets difficult in Elm, right? Because of the way they built it to use FRP, and that's the reason why they're moving from FRP to subscribables. But that's kind of the point of having like a one and all package, right? You're stuck with whatever they provide you. So Angular is the same way. A lot of people just use what's built in. Angular comes with everything, right? Like it comes with a kitchen sink, which is the phrase they use. And if you don't, you want to learn Angular, there's so much to learn around it. But with React and Redux, it's a very small footprint by itself. And yes, it's true when you want to do more complicated things, you need to use all these additional libraries. But the initial step of learning React and learning Redux is very small comparatively.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you think that it was like a good thing that they removed? I think it was called signals, like this feature that provided like the functional reactive programming capabilities. Do you think it was a good thing or a bad thing? Because I'm like trying to know the standpoints from some more experienced people, like to see if I go down that path or maybe I better start learning React or some other tool?
I don't know if I don't know enough about Elm to speak about
Hmm.
it. I don't know the difference between signals and subscribables. I just know that signals are FRP and RxJS and observables themselves aren't FRP, but it's a very similar concept.
Hmm.
It's not true FRP, I should say. I don't know how it'll turn out. I think the thing with Elm is it's still so very new,
Hmm.
and its user base is so small that it'll take a while before it becomes something that's fully fleshed in and
Yeah.
ready for big companies to use. I know of one company that is using it, and I think that's the only one I know of, and they're actually pushing to have Elm design to be used on the back end too as a server. I think they've even hired the guy that created Elm as a employee to work on Elm itself. It's a cool project. It's a really cool language, and I hope that it gets really big, but it's still not there.
Yeah, yeah, I think like they are like following the same path that Node followed. Like they have like I guess the industry as a whole is learning the some lessons from the success of Node and like getting all these lessons and applying this knowledge like to get developer adoption right so that they are
Mhm.
successful. But
Yeah,
that's like an interesting point too.
yeah. I think definitely Clojure scripts. If you need to learn a second language, I would go with Clojure
Mm,
script, just because it's used in a lot of companies already. And the Clojure itself uses the JVM, and the JVM is a proven technology.
mhm.
I think that's a turnoff for me, is having to maintain a JVM. I don't use anything that requires Java currently, and I think the first time I tried to use Clojure script, I just couldn't get it to work. I just couldn't get it to find the JVM, and I don't know. I don't have enough understanding to get it working. So that was my big turnoff with Clojure script. But the language itself is pretty cool.
Mhm. Okay, I have one last question. One
Go
last
ahead.
question
Sure.
in the top, following the topic of like alternative languages. Have you
Sure.
tried Elixir and because I think it's also a language and a well, a language that is like having a lot of traction right now, a lot of growth. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it has big claims. They say that it can handle like millions of connections. But then my problem is it looks too much like Ruby, and I just don't like
Mm.
Ruby.
Oh,
Not that Ruby is a bad language or anything. I can't. It's hard for me to look at. Like for me, language needs to be readable and enjoyable. And I know that's a very opinionated thing. It's very subjective, right? It's an objective thing. But that's on my end. I've heard really good things about it. I just haven't
mhm.
really seen it in practice, and I probably wouldn't. I don't think I'm going to learn it or put too much effort into researching it.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Let me step in for a second here, and because I mean, time does fly, and we only have a few minutes left. We have about 12 minutes left, and Berkeley, there's something that if I'm going to ask you to please elaborate a little bit on, which is this. Let me just share something here with the audience. Okay, and tell us about your workshop, React Weekend, the 2-day intensive React.js workshop. What is this?
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about this, what the purpose is, who it is intended for, and every pertinent detail that you want to share.
So this 2-day workshop we're doing is a introductory workshop to React and Redux and Webpack. So the idea is behind this is that you can go as a newbie to React and come out building real apps that you can push into production. It's a 2-day weekend here in San Francisco. See the price there. I'm really excited to teach. We've taught, I think, one class before in San Francisco as well, and it was super fun, super excited, and it turned out really well. So I'm really excited to do it again. I think this is the first time we're doing a 2-day workshop, um, and this is the first time we're also doing Redux. I'm really excited about teaching Redux and see how people take it to Redux.
That's great. That's great. And I also understand that based on what I see here, that people are saying things, right? Uh, Training was a great opportunity to work with and learn from real-world React experts. Guys have a solid grasp of the technology and the best practices around using it. So yeah, there are quite a few testimonials here, and
Yeah, the
but
idea is that the people teaching you actually use React in production, as opposed to someone who just teaches.
yes, I understand. Okay, and it's going to be you and Ian Sinnott, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. So where can the audience learn more about this particular workshop? Is there an URL you can
We have
share?
a meetup page. I don't think we have a live URL yet. We will soon. So unfortunately, that long link that you have there is the only link we have. We also have a meetup page. Let me send you the link here.
Yeah.
It's meetup.com/real-world-react.
I'll tell you what.
Let me see if I can send it to you here as a text.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and well, in case you're wondering, excuse all the noise, but they're building and installing things here. So
Sure.
fortunately, they're doing it at the end of the session. Okay, what's the? You said you were going to share something, right, Berkeley?
I sent it to you in the chat. I don't know how to send it to your audience.
Yeah, it's yeah, I can see it here. So I'll just use my. Let's say, okay.
So we also run a meetup page here, and we run meetups here in San Francisco. So I don't know how pertinent that is to your audience, but we have a meetup once a month where we give talks specifically about React and the technologies around React.
Okay, I see. Real world. Hold on one second. I want to show something to the audience here, so they can actually see it. React. So here you have it, folks. I was using my latest technology iPad, and here it is. Okay, it's www.meetup.com/real-world-react. So that's the page. Go there, and you'll find all the info about this workshop. Right? Am I right, Berkeley?
Yes.
Excellent.
It'll be the next event there.
Excellent. Great. So let's see, and also let's go to the URL that you shared so we can share it also with our audience. And there you have it, folks. And we'll be all set here. And so there you have it.
So there you can see the weekend event we have. We also have an upcoming presentation in early June before this event. It's not up on the page yet. We're still working on our second presentation, but we have a talk on using Webpack and learning Webpack as the first talk.
Okay, excellent. Well, there you have it, folks. Let me just close this. You have the URL. You have the info. Needless to say, for those of you who are watching, you can send us, if you have any further questions about this, you can either contact us at dojolive@nearsoft.com, or what about any contact info for you at Berkeley? Is there anything you would like to share with our audience? You can pretty much use the same technology that I just used and do this, right? You can share it to the screen. To the screen.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter.
That'll work. That'll work.
So let me put this on here.
You can see, folks, that we're a high-tech technology company still using notepads. And hey, this is a pen. We still use pens. There you have it. Berkeley True. That's your Twitter handle, right?
That's my handle everywhere.
Okay. Everywhere. Okay. There. So you got it. Berkeley True. And okay, as we were approaching final minutes of the broadcast, Hugo, do you have any final questions or words or comments for Berkeley before we wrap up the session?
Yeah, only one final question regarding React. I think like the React curriculum and challenges is like work in progress in FreeCodeCamp, right? You are working on that.
Yes. Yeah, we're building out the framework to handle React and handle async testing. So currently we're doing essentially just plain JavaScript and some jQuery. So the test framework that we have, the framework, which is also built using RxJS observables, only handles one file at a time. So I'm rebuilding it to handle multiple files, and I'm also converting the whole website over to React and Redux.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it would be amazing when you can, well, people can also learn React in FreeCodeCamp, I think. Well, just final question for me. It was a pleasure, and thanks for answering all my many questions.
Hey, same here. I mean, I have even more questions. Actually, I have questions about the whole topic, but that's okay. I mean, you can. Okay, Berkeley, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for having agreed to share your knowledge, your views, and your expertise with our audience and with us, with Hugo and myself. And as I said at the beginning, before we went on the air, you and I are going to be in touch because we'll be sending you soon one of these little babies here, and also one of these. And this is I'm just showing in case someone out there is watching and wants to be something to share in these broadcasts. Contact me, and you'll be receiving one of these in your inbox in your mail soon. All right. So again, Berkeley, any final words? Any final words before we wrap up the session? What would you like to leave our audience with regarding anything we have talked about today?
Yeah, I think there is a steep learning curve with RxJS, but I think it's worth the time investment. I also want to thank you too, Hugo and Carlos, for having me on, and I really appreciate it. I wish we had more time for more questions. But thank you very much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's our pleasure. All right. Well, guys, I guess this is it. And I want to thank the audience as well. And this was another episode, another broadcast of DojoLIVE, broadcasting live, obviously, from our beautiful Mexico City offices, which is what you see here in the back. And Hugo is right there in our Chihuahua offices. And so we're kind of all over the place. But thank you for being here with us today. And you have a wonderful day. We're going to be in touch. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Goodbye.
You too. Bye.